Hello Internet, it's time for another Wednesday serial. It is the 5th week of the DC relaunch. Let's get this thing going. Just to start off, and I will come back to this at the end, but I just wanted to give you a short list of comics that I started reading from the DC relaunch that I got a few pages into, and for taste bearers, or just frankly the way it was done, I couldn't even bother to finish it this week. I've had a crappy day, whatever, wasn't in the mood. But honestly, second issue, if I'm not interested enough to read your damn comic, you're out. First, Static Shock, blah, most of the reasons I said last time. Second, Red Lantern, they're trying to establish a new character, and just by the title and knowing the info of that, you have half the story. Green Arrow, poorly written. They've taken away the mustache, and along with it they've taken away everything that makes the character. Making him younger also takes away so much of what made him Oliver Queen, and now you just have a semi-liberal, complete now douchebag with a bow and arrow, and he is a douche in here. Total bro. Yeah. There's Omac. Ick. There's Hunk and Doug. Yeah. Peh. To continue with that theme, there is Stormwatch, but I wanted to take a minute to talk about this one because this comic in and of itself isn't terrible, but given the authority and the love for some of these characters and the way they're being presented now, and the thing is a lot of these characters were jerks. They're not particularly Paragon-esque characters, but there was a code to them, there was a reasoning, and they were trying to do something better, and they're just, since the DC's now dark and grittier, this has to be even grittier now, I guess, was the idea, whereas I think it would have been a lot better if they just blended in, not worried about that editorial mandate. But the characters in here are just so ick that I just couldn't even get into it. Midnighter is such a jerk in here that I just don't even want to read it, which is unfortunate. It really was just the characterization. The story's going in an interesting way, and yeah, the art is pretty much what every DC comic is now. Swamp Thing is an interesting comic. I actually did enjoy this one. There is some very, very text-heavy sections like this, which pacing's a little off in this book, I will say, but the action, bam, moves fast. But what's interesting is this is more like a horror story with Swamp Thing in it than a Swamp Thing-centric comic. I don't know if that's how it used to be, but that's the way this is. The art in here, Yannick Paquette, gorgeous. I really like this book, but I have to be honest, the way it's paced, the way it reads, it will be so much better in trade, just as I anticipated, and I can say that definitively now. So I think it's a great book, and I think you should check it out, especially if you haven't been, but wait for a trade, and I think you'll enjoy it all the more. Men of War is a mixed bag, but in a very definitive way. The first story with Sergeant Rock, actually, he meets Cersei, and it's this interesting idea of this army man being in the DCU, and it's just this very apt title of man versus gods. They're not trying to play any metaphor in it. They're trying to bring the metaphor in reverse, and it's actually a really compelling story. That being said, it was a story that I got within the pages of this book. That being said, the second half was just a straight-up army story, and it just didn't grab me. I can see it was well done. The art doesn't seem fitting for the comic, though decent. But I'll be honest, at $3.99 when I'm only liking half the book, no thanks. If it was just the Sergeant Rock story at $2.99 or whatever, I'd be picking this up. So that's where I'm at with that. Okay, I'm about to say something, and I realize I'm white. And the best part is it's not even racist, even though it'll sound racist for a twinge until I explain myself. Batwing is a somewhat interesting story, but the art is so terrible. For what I said last time, backgrounds are not there, but also because a lot of characters look alike. Now I know that sounds bad because it's in Africa and they're all black except for Batman, who's in the shadows. But No, it's not that. It is because there are a couple of characters in here out of the 4, really, that have the same facial structure, the same haircut, and since there is no eyes actually ever really shown or drawn except briefly, and it's not there, and it's all the colors in this hazy way that you just can't really tell them apart. And since no characters have been established yet, issue 2 with non-established characters, I can't tell them apart. It makes it really hard to decipher what's going on, and frankly, it's not worth the time to try to solve that mystery. Alright, Detective Comics. When I was reading this, I got this book confused with every other Batman title that is coming out since the relaunch. The way they wrote them, it was so akin to pretty much everyone that, and it took a little bit that was very similar to every other book, and I just got it so mixed in my head I didn't know which way was up. Thanks, DC. Way too many Batman books. And I know I'm being negative, but no book made me more negative than this one. Justice League International. Now, I had some hope for this book. I really did. It took some characters and did a bit with the Justice League Generation Lost cast, basically, which more or less JLI of the past, and it fell so short. I was giving it a chance to see because they were kind of just bringing it together and you couldn't really see any of the characters yet, but this is really Booster's book with a more robust supportive cast, and everything that made Booster interesting in the past, everything that made him worthwhile is gone. He is so clean cut, so upstanding. So, I mean, any pitfalls that he had or that they alluded to in the first book are just gone, and now he's this clean-cut leader character, which is what a lot of people accuse Cyclops of being written as, but rarely is. That is Booster in this book, and it is painful to read. And also, I'm not even a Batman fan, but seeing Batman subservient to him, weird. And also Skeets. I love Skeets back in the day, 3 months ago. And now, he's not even a floating thing around. He's like an AI in his glasses or something. And there's the other JLI characters that are barely worth mentioning here, except for the Red Rocket, the Russian guy, who's a stereotypical Russian and nothing more in this comic, which... really, it's just, at first I was giving this book a chance, but it hurt to read this book. Do not pick this up. Oh my gosh. Alright, time for some positivity. Animal Man. This book, again, very family-centric, but moving and going at the same time, and I don't want to speak too much to this one because I'm going to spoil it. But this book is moving in weird ways, and even the small moments seem to carry a weight to them that no other book seemingly in the pile thus far can have throughout an entire comic. The art in here actually really fits as well, and I think I could see myself continuing with this book. I'll see how I feel. I'm feeling pretty good about the book right now, but I have a feeling it might be a contrast issue. And then there's Action Comics 2. And I will say this was a great issue. The art was cool, they made Lex kind of extra creepy, and the story was great, although the characterization of Superman is still this young jerk Superman. They have this little bit in the back where Grant Morrison says, he's free of Mom, Pa, and Kent, who are apparently dead. You're getting a lot of plot points reading in the back that aren't actually part of the story, which, easy. But the idea that he's free of them and now he's the most powerful being on the planet, he's going to do what he wants. And that's an interesting angle, and I think this will make an interesting story, but if they try to drag out this Superman too long, I think it's going to fall on its feet. However, beyond next month, I don't think I'll be along for the ride. I'll probably pick this up and trade or something. I'll see where I feel down the road. But my issue was, this comic is a 20-page comic like all the others, but it's $3.99, and it's good, but it's not so great like Uncanny X-Force that I'll be blind to that extra dollar. I can't suck it up for this one, and I know I'm trying to avoid that kind of analysis, but it was so apt here. And also, they do add a little bit. I mean, there's some stuff in the back with concept art, notes on the story and whatnot, but I'm not buying a comic to read notes on the comic. So, another one that I won't be picking up, at least for the meanwhile. Alright, and since I'm able to get through that so much quicker, I'm going to talk about what else I got this week since I'm going down the list. And thankfully, these comics were awesome. First off, for the other two, was Chew 21, and here you see Chew become kind of just more of a beat cop. And you see him kind of crack a more normal case using his powers, and it's actually pretty satisfying issue. I mean, whereas this is part of the series, this is more or less a standalone issue, and whereas I would say if you haven't tried Chew, you could pick up this issue and read it and it'd be fine. It's true, however, if you haven't read Chew, please just go check out the first trade. It's $10 retail. You can probably find a deal for it online. Maybe, I don't know, but it is one of the greatest comics and takes advantage of everything that a comic can be. This is so refreshing to read. So, yay, another great issue of Chew. Shock. And let the ramble begin. X-Men Schism. And since I haven't touched Schism really up to this point, I would like to delve into it a little. First off, I will say there's a Bleeding Cool article. I'm not going to link to it because I don't want to search for it and I'm lazy, but you can go find it, where they talk about X-Men and Cyclops have a big battle in here, and then he gets all bandaged up, but you'll notice where his hurt arm is keeps flopping sides. I'm willing to let it slide, but come on guys, Marvel, professional company, just check that stuff. You have editors to check this stuff specifically. Be on the ball. But, yeah, okay, whatever. Not so important, but kind of a small failing. This was a really well done X-Men event. And I say that, and I've been liking all the X-Men events for the past several years. I think it's about the only thing that has been worth reading for X-Men. That being said, I'm curious to see where the other X books will be headed, but until I hear some reviews from other people or something, I'm just not sold yet, because the creative staffs on them seem to be the people who were making it kind of boring in the first place, so I need a little more motivation. Okay, but this event, I'm sure you all know, Wolverine and Cyclops fight over an idea. A new Hellfire Club has arisen. They're all kids and it's kind of crazy goofy, akin to Umbrella Academy, whatever, but the idea of creepy kids taking over isn't a new one. It's also very akin to Runaways in some way in that respect. I guess not really. You then move on to see them drum up all these old Sentinels, and they get this huge Sentinel to attack Utopia, which, if you're unfamiliar, is where all the mutants are living right now, because the X-Men and all mutants together have been fighting for survival, and Cyclops has become pretty battle-hardened and kind of too used to making hard and somewhat morally wrong decisions just in the name of survival. And Wolverine's been going along with it because he's been seeing what Cyclops is doing, and they have an understanding after years of strife and whatnot. Anyways, Sentinel's coming in, that's the big part, and Cyclops, with all of his teams out, the new X-Men, the Generation Hope, all the teens basically, say they're willing to step up to the cause and fight with him. And Wolverine says making kids fight is wrong, which, of course making kids fight is wrong. But the interesting part, and a part that I've seen a few people kind of miss when it comes to the reading of this book, that Jason Aaron did really do a good job of setting up, but I guess if you're not so attuned to your X-Men history, it would kind of fall a little flat. Cyclops makes a big point, especially in the first issue of this mini, of saying that he's been fighting Sentinels all his life, and he doesn't feel that he has to justify fighting Sentinels because they've been trying to kill him and his kind since he was a teenager, since he was a child, since he's been fighting since then. He's a child warrior. He doesn't see anything wrong with people young, though willing to step up to the cause and fight, because that's what he did, and that's what made him the man he is today. So you come to, he didn't want to call on the young ones before. He said they weren't ready, and he more or less agreed, but here they were, dire straits. It was do or die. He let them step up to the plate. Wolverine said it was wrong and had a kill switch, I guess, to blow up the island. Comic books, whatever. And Cyclops and Wolverine fight over that, and then in the end, despite them fighting, with the kids fighting too, they take out the Sentinel, they win the day. Cyclops is right. Wolverine still feels, by going down this path and by having done all the stuff that he's done for Cyclops up to this point, he's done. He's out. That's where the schism happens. And yes, spoilers. Too late, but whatever. You can't talk about a book if you don't talk about it, and especially this for an ending when everyone knew it was coming, because that's the point of the book. Whatever. What's interesting about this is it really sells it, and it really sells this division. And you still feel like there's an understanding, you know these characters will be dealing with each other, but they have an uneasy truce at the end. Going out of this from more of a what do I want to keep reading standpoint, it seems like Wolverine's taking Iceman and the new X-Men with him, which is weird that the young teen characters seem to be going with him, despite the whole thing with Cyclops. It seems to kind of steal a little of the energy from this book when it happens so immediately. I could be wrong, though, it's just the way it appeared. Also, Iceman's going with Wolverine. Okay, but it seems like most of the named characters that you know are sticking with Cyclops and how that works. So, where this heads, I don't know, but this book in and of itself captures a moment, captures a story, which is interesting in and of itself. Also, the art in every issue was pretty awesome, and done by someone different every time. So, great idea for a mini, and great to see it come through, and a great way to start off a relaunch for a book, unlike some other things. Time for the Ramble Part 2, as per all the DC books that I kind of just tossed by the wayside. There are so many books here that I was willing to try and were interested in, and they're coming up decent to mediocre to bad. And for all that DC's done for this relaunch, and there are some good books in there, and I really feel this, especially at this point, is kind of the stinker week for me. I'm almost hoping so at this point. But just so much of the characterization, what people loved about DC, that you totally would have to carry over if you're even using the same character whatsoever, is lost. The idea of a Booster Gold that doesn't have a bit of the merchandising or the how can I get ahead, even to just think about it for a moment, isn't Booster Gold. Also, to have a woman clinging to Booster and he doesn't get a little goofy about it, isn't Booster Gold in any way. It's someone who has the name and has the face, but isn't the character in the slightest. Batman's so across the board, since he's the most visible character through this relaunch, that you're running into the same problem that they had already, that Batman can basically be anyone. He's a faceless entity, and also, in some ways, more super than any other character. I will say, Superman, they're doing some interesting things with, kind of bringing him down a notch to make him more in a visceral world sense, at least, even if his feats are so fantastic, makes him feel more super than less so, just because you can grasp more of what's going on than it be world tilting dynamics that are just so far beyond comprehension that it's just sci-fi at that point, and nothing more. Other lesser-known characters, I think Vertigo sort of characters they seem to be treating with a fair amount of respect. However, they are taking other characters and it just doesn't work with them, namely the Wildstorm characters. I can't think of one Wildstorm character that they're using that seems to be hitting the flow of what the character used to be at all. Which is a shame, because these are characters with fairly short but definitive histories that have a very definitive character that hasn't been dragged out through the ages, so they don't have the Superman or Batman defense here, where it's been written for so many ages, so it's a character to fit the age. Sans the Jenny Quantum character who actually does change, but that's more of a Doctor Who change where it's an actual physical different character, but still the same character. That's a different thing though. That is that character. And even then, that's probably the one that for the 3 panels she was in last time they got right. It just... The more I dig into the DC relaunch, the more underwhelmed I am by the whole thing. Last month, I thought I was going to be buying way more DC titles. This time around, this far, I'm wondering if I'll be picking up more than a small handful. So, just thought I'd put that out there. Peace, love, hope you all have a great time. I'll hit you soon with another comic review. And please, if you have any contention or any argument for any comic that I have knocked, or anything about the DC relaunch that I've said, or any of the other books I've mentioned, certainly anything about Schism, please question, comment below. And remember, there's a like button. It helps more people see it, which means more people suffer like you just have. Alright, bye.